So they don't ever want their supporters to get comfortable. Never comfortable. There has to always be an enemy, always be an attacker. Okay, because they have to have their support. And if you notice, that's what we have. That's what we have going on right now in America. We have a system by which it's based upon fear and predicated upon, an outside enemy, the bad guys against the good guys. And the good guys are trying to do their best to protect the world from insane savages Islamicists, jihadists, who want to just cut the heads off people and brutalize women. And all this, and this culture that that is over 1,500 years old, built upon the foundation is Judaism. The foundation is Adam. The foundation of it is Christianity. The foundation is very solid, but it just started in the last 12 years, 18 years, want to start cutting people's head off and blowing up buildings. Wow. In the last 18 years, it just went awry. They just started going berserk. They just started losing it. Okay? When Uranus went when Uranus went in Aries, right? They just lost their mind. They just went crazy, right? Okay. So anyway, now no, the corporate world, culture of death, commercial consciousness started going crazy because they were getting ready to lose power. They were getting ready to collapse. They knew the Christ consciousness was coming in because they were well aware of that, and so they had to do something to try to disrupt that. And that is what their agenda is today. They know their commercial world is collapsing, but they are trying to save it, and they are trying to instill as much fear and humanity as they possibly can so that they can continue to look like the good guys, and humanity, those of the beta caucasoid, will continue to support them because they'll continue to be afraid. Because remember, the betas have no real power. Okay, and when their world collapses, then they have to face all their fears, and they don't want to face their fears. That is the problem. The beta caucasoids don't want to face their fears. Remember, they've been fed fear about black, and when I mean black, I mean alpha, gamma, neutron, the alpha, gamma, neutron semen of Adam. And that semen is in Europeans, that semen is in Asians, that semen is in Africans, that semen is in all humanity. Okay, all humanity. Okay, but the betas, okay, the beta male corporates, the beta males, all the fear that they've been fed all these years about humanity, okay, they're savages, they this, and they're cut people's head off, and the fear, they have to face that. They don't want to face that. They're scared. They've been traumatized. I mean, they've seen the towers go down on 9/11, the school shootings, cutting off heads, and they're told that their little corporate, commercial, cultural death is protecting them from that. That's why they're doing all that wars. So, they're going to support that until the market finally collapses, and when it does, they are going to be terrified. That's why they're the ones who are loading up on the guns and all this, because they're the ones who are going to go crazy and shoot up and just go crazy and shoot up people because they're scared. They've been scared. They've been taught fear. They've been fed fear porn all their life about every other culture, every stereotype. They're the drug heads. They're about humanity, Hebrew black people. They're the drug heads. They're domestic terrorists, basically. The Arabs are, international terrorists. The Mexicans are rapists. The Chinese or whatever, they stereotype about them. So every culture except for that little beta caucasoid culture has been stereotyped to be savages or barbarians or brutes or something that is, inhumane. and it terrorizes the little betas who support the corporate structure. So they feel the only power they have is to support the commercial culture of death, corporate culture of death. That's their only defense. So they are willing to support it to the teeth. What did they say in Charlotte, Virginia? Jews will not replace us. Well, they're talking about black people. They're talking about black Hebrew people, not Zionists. They're talking about black Hebrew people. And when I mean black as it results to the alpha gamma neutron semen of Adam, and that comes from that semen will spread all over the world, right? In Asia and Africa and first Africa, that's where my heart is. Africa, because home is where the heart is. Europe, Eastern Europe, all over the world, right? And remember, we don't say white people. They're only black people, because Adam was a black man, and his seed was, rainbow. From the Easter eggs are a rainbow, right? The Easter eggs are multiple of the colors, right? Okay. Hues, shades of hues, right? The Easter eggs are, Hawa's eggs are a multiple of hues, right? Okay, so anyway, so as I said, so they're scared of humanity. The beta males are scared of humanity, okay? The beta male culture of death is scared of humanity, okay? So they want to keep that, and you got to remember this too, they are of the, not only they're scared of humanity, but remember, where their consciousness is, and remember Einstein's theory of relativity, okay? You can only, let's say, perception, when we put Einstein's theory of relativity in perspective of perception, you can only see according to your location, okay? So your perception of reality is based upon your spiritual location. So if a person's consciousness is at the first dimension, then they're going to have first dimension consciousness. If they're in the second chakra, they're going to have second dimension consciousness. They're in the third chakra, they're going to have third dimension consciousness. They're on the fourth chakra, they're going to have fourth dimension consciousness. They're on the fifth chakra, fifth dimension consciousness. Sixth dimension, seventh dimension. So, and in the West is predicated upon, Eastern consciousness. So they're still evolving, right? According to how fast their science is able to catch up to the advanced civilization of consciousness as it relates to African consciousness, as it relates to Adamic consciousness, as it relates to crown chakra consciousness, as it relates to Adam being created and calibrated by Allah in Jannah, seventh dimension consciousness. They can't even understand fourth dimension yet. Science hasn't even read as it relates to the Tesseract. They can't even understand fourth dimension consciousness. They're still in 3D, the third chakra. Okay, so consciousness is relative to spiritual location as it relates to, let's say, the chakra system. Okay, so therefore, got to remember the West is still evolving according to their scientific advancements. Okay, whereas the East is like when they dealing with a person of Western consciousness as it relates to the level of dimension, as it relates to their chakra system, their level of spiritual perspective. Okay, as it relates to the chakra system, for a Westerner, an Easterner, it's like traveling back in time, going back to the past, and for a Westerner, it's like having to go in the future and try to understand the future. It's going to be difficult to communicate. Okay? So you got to be patient on both aspects when you're dealing with, let's say, somebody who's coming out of beta consciousness. They have a totally altered state of reality. Okay? They have an id state of reality, a child's perspective of reality as it relates to commercial, being bred and fed upon commercial consciousness. Okay? So when East meets West, it's like East going back in Eastern consciousness going back into the past, and Western consciousness coming into the future. Okay, and as I said, that's like and that relates to time too, right? Because the East is ahead of the West as it relates to time, as it relates to consciousness as well. It's the same thing. Okay. So the West can only go as far as science can take it, and generally science is behind spiritual consciousness. It always is, because you'll hear them say, "Oh, the Bible, that was spoken in the Quran 1,500 years ago. That was spoken in the pyramids of Egypt a long time ago. That's in the Book of the Dead. That's in Taoism. That's in this religion. That's in this teaching, Eastern teaching. That's in Sanskrit. That's in this." Science is way behind spiritual consciousness. So the West can only evolve as fast, consciously evolve as its science. And then everybody's not science savvy in the West as well. Okay? Because it waters down education. So you got to understand that, that's what's going on here. Okay? So, it's going to take some spiritual consciousness is going, or let's say some of humanity, or some of those who coming out of the commercial consciousness, the alter ego, is going to be born. Their third eye is going to open faster than the other, according to their spiritual location, as it relates to their perception, as it relates to their location on the chakra system, right? As it relates to the dimensions, right? Celestial dimensions, right? Okay. So got to be patient and pray. Okay? Until let's say, a greater until being reborn becomes the norm. Okay? The human norm. Okay? But when they first break out of that commercial consciousness, they're going to be scared because humanity was told to be savages. Everybody with a darker skin, sense of hue, were told to be savages. And only the people with the lightest beta hue are the good guys. And they want to save the world. And they have the moral compass. Right? So you got to remember that. Okay? And you just got to look at them and remember, when you're talking to them, coming freshly out of the, like the fobs. Remember how you say fobs come across fresh off the boat? Foreigners coming into America, and they got to get savvy to the culture, right? American culture, let's say, common culture, right? So it's the same way when they come in fresh out the commercial conscious of the alter egos. They got to get awakened to, the natural world, right? The natural world. And they'll be afraid because everybody in the natural world are savages, right? Even nature is said to be a savage, right? Okay. And everybody's a savage except Western Christendom, right? The Western Christendom is the only holy religion, holy spirituality that comes out of the Vatican, because that's where it's born out of. And then, because that's where Protestantism comes out of, that's where Lutheran comes out of, and that's where utilitarianism comes out of, that's where Jehovah's Witness comes out of, it's where all of them comes out of them. As I said, Lutheranism comes out of that. Anglican Church comes out of Christianity. All of it comes out of Christianity. So Catholicism. So if Catholicism is corrupt, then all of Christianity is corrupt. So where the Bible comes out of the book of the Christian Catholicism, right? So only Catholicism is to be seen correct. And the British Bible, the King James made is that their British Beta King James made is the only Bible, and their Antichrist Jesus, Isis with the J, the long I, is the only God, and he's the Son of God. So the Son of God, so God must be a beta caucasoid homosexual male too, right? And he is, right? According to the God they worship, right? Because the God they worship is Satan, right? So the only Jesus is the Jesus with the long I, and that would be the Jesus with the J, not the Jesus with the short I that came out of the east, because the Jesus that came out of the east is a savage, right? Because he looks like he looks like the Adam, the Adam that was created in the seventh heaven, the Adam that was calibrated by Allah, the Adam that was told to bow down, that all the angels were told to bow down, the Adam that Allah blew his spirit blew into the nose of Adam, the Adam that, as I said, that was educated by Allah, right? So that Jesus is like that Adam, and so he's got to be a savage like that Adam, right? So we got to the good Adam, the homosexual Adam, has the long J, right? Okay. And again, many may get angry that the manner in which I'm speaking about their Jesus with the long I, but you know what? The truth of the matter is, do your own research and you'll find that J is really an I. And if the J is an I, the misrepresentation of the name, misrepresentation of the culture, misrepresentation of the identity, misrepresentation of his word, then you have an imposter Jesus. You have an imposter prophet born of a virgin. Okay? You just have a commercial virgin, right? A fiat commercial virgin. Okay? You don't even have the real version. Okay? You don't have the real gospel. So you gotta recognize that aspect too, okay? Now, so anyway, so for the people for the followers in the supporters in the commercial corporate state of death, okay, that's the only God they know. That's the only God they want to worship. That's the only Bible they want to have, and that's the only Christendom they want to promote. Right? That's the only spirituality they want to promote. Is that Christendom that came out of the Catholic, Church, that came out of the Vatican. They came out of the Vatican. That's the only Christianity they want to promote around the world, and that's the Christianity they want the whole world to worship. Okay? That's the whole religion they want the whole world to worship. Is the white Jesus, the beta Caucasoid Jesus, the pleasurized King James Version, and the beta holy homosexual spirit. Okay, and if the people don't, then their religion is savagery. Their religion is paganism. Okay, these are people who are supporters of the culture because they've been indoctrinated in the culture of death. And held there by fear, okay? Fear of death, right? But not death by their own cult, by the culture they support. No, death by the savages that are on the outside. They've been disenfranchised for good reason, right? Because they're savages, right? Because they're savages and they cannot be helped, right? Okay. Anyway, okay. Now, and all who don't worship the beta Jesus or follow the beta Caucasoid Jesus King James Bible, right? They are fringed to and spiritually excommunicated, and placed on the fringes of society of the culture of death and marked for death, right? Like Islam, right? Okay. Now, so and as I said, all humanity is that doesn't ascribe to that beta Caucasoid Christendom or homosexual Vatican Christendom. Or beta homosexual Jesus, Caucasoid Jesus, okay? They're excommunicated or basically exiled to the fringes of Western commercial civilization, right? Because they are uncivilized savages right? And they've been marked as uncivilized savages by the commercial culture of death, right? That validates who is to be accepted and who is not to be accepted, who is to be placed to death and who's not to be a place of death. And those who are placed to death are generally the ones who are excommunicated by, who pose a threat to the beta culture of death. And that's generally those without the semen who have the spirit of Adam, which is the Holy Spirit in them, and which is the alpha gamma neutron energy. That's the atom, okay? They are the ones who are excommunicated, disenfranchised, and marked for death. And what marks them is the fact that they're savage and uncivilized, right? Because they can't be civilized, be brought into a civilized commercial world that is so, well structured and law abiding, right? They don't abide by the law, right? They're uncivilized. I mean, look at ISIS. They're cutting off people's heads. They're just terrorizing the world. Look at Assad. He's just gassing his own people. Look at Saddam Hussein. He was gassing his own people with the same weapons of mass destruction. He had weapons of mass destruction. We have weapons of mass destruction, but we're not going to kill anybody with our weapons of mass destruction. We're just going to use them to protect ourselves. Right? Our commercial world, our commercial selves, our alter ego, right? Our culture of death, right? We're going to use our depleted uranium to kill little Iraqi children and destroy their DNA. So all their everything, they will, all their children will be born deformed, right? We're going to, and look at Libya, what they did, what Muammar Gaddafi did. He also killed his own people, and now it must be contagious because Iran is doing the same thing. It must be something in the chemtrails that's causing these dictators that America supported all these years to suddenly start turning, killing their own people, whereby America has to go in. Our culture of death has a commercial world. We have to use our own resources, and we are almost depleted in all of we're almost bankrupt because we're saving the world from those savages. So, and from killing their own people, and they're killing poor little women and defenseless children. Despite we're incarcerating them by the millions in America, we're miseducating them. We're snatching the poor little food stamps at their very little hands to save ourselves millions in taxes. But they're killing people, their own people, and we're going to save their little people from their own vicious savagery because we're so humane, we're so humanitarian in our own little culture of fear. But in reality, it's to protect our commercial world so they don't come into our neighborhoods and destroy our neighborhoods and break down our societies. Okay, our civilized society, because they're just destroying the civilized world. They're the one who's genetically modifying the foods. These savages, these Iranians, these Assyrians, these Iraqis, these Palestinians, these Libyans. They're the ones who's genetically modifying the foods. They're the ones who's putting all the chemicals, the lead in the food, and the lead in the air, and the aluminum in the air, and killing up all the fish and destroying the oceans. And they're the ones who's giving us medicine, poisonous medicines. It's this damn Iraqis. It's not our own good people in the commercial world. It's not. Okay? And they're the uncivilized ones. We're the civilized ones. It's okay if our cultural death destroys the air and destroys the environment and deforestation and pollutes the air and genetically modifies the food and depopulate the earth. It's okay. Okay. Anyway, the beta caucasoids are only protecting the civilized world. The commercial world is the civilized world, and that's the civilized world that all of humanity is disenfranchised from. And that same civilized world is usurping all of the natural resources out of the world. Okay, but it's a savage. Adam, semen, the world of Adam's, the humanity created by Adam's semen that's creating all this savagery in the world and usurping all the natural resources off the Earth's planet. It's them that's doing that. Okay, so the many in the corporate world have an alter ego of reality. Okay, and inshallah, when that world collapses, they're going to go crazy. So be prepared, because inshallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, their world is going, that commercial culture of death, it's going to collapse. Inshallah, Allah has to collapse it in order to save the natural world, because that world culture of death is destroying all of human civilization. Because remember, civilization started before 1492, before 1776. The civilization started. Okay, before that, it's proven by the structure of the pyramids, why the pyramids were created, and all the advanced technology they have. Okay, so it's been proven that they are very civilized. Advanced civilizations. Okay, that were created. Thousands and thousands of years. Perhaps even hundreds of thousands of years before what they say was created. Okay, as it relates to Egypt, as it's supposed to reflect in Egypt, it's way before Egypt, right? Egypt is just the one the one that's most popular. Okay. Anyway, so when they wake up, and they will, expect them to be very, very frightened and very, mentally and emotionally, physically disturbed. Okay, so they're put on the fringes of society. Much of humanity, the Adam's semen, are put on the fringes of the so-called civilized, which is the commercial world, excommunicated from that, disenfranchised from that, and marked for extermination through wars, false flags, or what have you. They're marked for extermination because, as we said, the culture of death has to have an enemy. It has to have an enemy. It has to have a boogeyman in order for it to survive, because they have to have an excuse to kill somebody in order to survive, because their only way of survival is to kill somebody. So they have to have an excuse to do it, so they have to have a boogeyman. They have to go into somebody's land, steal somebody's natural resources, whether it be Assad, whether it be Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, whether it be Mujahideen or something like that. That's the president of Iraq. Whether it be Putin, whether it be whoever, it has to be. Whether it be the Korean president, it has to be some boogeyman, and it's always somebody that is not of the Beta Caucasoids. Okay, because they have to kill somebody, take somebody's life in order for them to survive. Right? In order for the commercial world to survive. And they have to always be portrayed as uncivilized savages, just like the natives of this land, of America. The corporate America was maligned as savages and so-called had to be exterminated by the cowboys, right? The cowboys were very good. They exterminated the savages, right? They exterminated them, right? Okay. So anyway... and they were marked as uncivilized, just like the Africans had to be enslaved because they were uncivilized. Mexicans had to have the Mexican-American War. The land had been taken from them because they were uncivilized. Okay, the indigenous had to have the Trail of Tears because they were uncivilized. Okay, the Arabs are now terrorists because they're uncivilized. So the reason for death of Adam's seed is always because they're uncivilized and they don't deserve to live. They don't deserve the right to life because they're uncivilized by the commercial world. They're uneducatable, right? They're uneducatable. They're just like the so-called rabbi, the Zionist fiat rabbi said about African Americans, they're monkeys. They're animals, they're savages, therefore they can be marked for destruction, extermination by the the civilized commercial world, the commercially civilized world, because the commercially civilized corporatized culture of death. Okay, they can be legally exterminated because they don't fit into that culture, that fascist culture. Okay, and that keeps that culture united by fear because of the uncivilized savages that are just waiting to come in and wreak havoc and destroy it. Just like when they did 9/11, was the inside job 9/11, Bush said, keep on shopping. They want to destroy our civilized way of life. Basically, he said, they want us to destroy our civilized way of life, these savages. Basically, that's what he was saying. He didn't say it literally, but that's, in essence, that's what he was saying. Okay? Okay. Right, so now the Arabs, because they want to take their natural resources, they want to take the land, they want to take Africa, they want to take, the resources. So the Arab nation are now savages. This policy of spiritual excommunication is a commercial disenfranchisement, right? It's a means to keep them disenfranchised. We're going to go to video 8 soon. Okay, so the way to keep them disenfranchised, this is foreign policy. Death is foreign policy. Is the culture of death, and it remains to this day. It determines who lives and who is to die, what nation is to be targeted, what nation is to be, as I said, exterminated. It is the way of manifest destiny, right? To kill, kill, kill. We're going to go to video 8 soon, and we're going to be done soon, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so as long as I said they have a boogeyman, as long as they can scare they're the supporters of fascism, and generally it's as long as they can do that, then they are they can keep their they can maintain their commercial power. They can remain commercially empowered. And that's the only power they have, is the power of life and death. And that's why, well, they don't have the power of life, but they have the power, the military power. That's why they try to maintain military prowess over they try to maintain the greater military prowess of other nations. That's why they don't want Iran to get the nuclear bomb, nuclear power armament, because they don't want Iran to have nuclear power. Because if Iran gets nuclear power, then the fascists, not the fascists, but the beta Caucasoid males will be threatened. So that is when they say Iran threatens the civilized world. They're talking about the Iran would, as a nuclear powered nation, would threaten the commercially civilized, corporatized culture of death. Because now Iran would have equal power to defend itself. And the corporatized, let's go to video 3, 7, 8. Fuck me. Fuck. What'd I do? Oh, video. Assalamu alaikum.